Hey y'all, bear with me. I am Weird Barbie today. So I want to talk a little bit about patriarchy and the ownership of women's bodies. And that's another reason why I'm wearing this dress, which is what I had on Sunday. And you can see it's not exactly the most seductive, hey Celine, of garments. It's loose, wore a t-shirt under so I could wear a bra just like I have on now. And it kind of figures into my talk about patriarchy and men that think that they own women's bodies. What do I mean? Well, let me go there. But first, let me say I'm Suzanne Tickamar. I used to write a column called No Longer Quivering at Pathos about this very subject, about patriarchy, about these guys that think they own everything and you have to do what they want. My dog is a heart murmur, but we're working on it. Well, it's good you're aware of it. And so there you go. Don't believe what I'm talking about. These are just my opinions. Do you do your own research? I have been rewatching clips from the Barbie movie. I have to sit down and rewatch it. I didn't see it until recently because of living in Costa Rica. And when it came to the theater here, I missed the week that it was here with English instead of subtitles and being in Spanish and all that. So it took me a little while to see it, and when I did, I was just, like, blown away because it hit so many things we've talked about here, and that's one thing I've seen in the anti-Katie Joy community where we have struggled with is not saying nasty things about other women's appearance. There was a comedian that said, "Why is Barbie with Ken when he has no job?" And no, I don't know. Exactly. Ken is a loser. I always thought Ken was a loser. I always wanted my Barbie to be with G.I. Joe. At least he was doing I always wanted my Barbie to be with G.I. Joe. At least he was doing something important, even if it was blowing folks up. At least he wasn't jobless like Ken. So if you haven't seen the Barbie movie, it was a delight. I liked Alan in the Barbie movie. I did too. Alan was a better friend to Barbie than he ever was to Ken. And I just got a big laugh out of so much of it and then kind of like, uh-huh, out of so much of it because it was literally, I'm sorry if I'm twitching around and jumping around topics today, but I'm fighting a cold. So my brain is not functional as well as I would like it to be. This is why I didn't do a live scene of a live stream yesterday because I was not able to. It's just having one of them days. So going back to Alan, Barbie, the whole thing, the Barbie movie really, in my eyes, it exposed what a weak sauce said a patriarchy when he came back after had been influenced by the MGTOW guys and Jordan Peterson and a whole lot of just nonsense. I was hoping that as time went on, and you have to understand, I was a child of the 60s. I got to hear all the feminism, women burning her bra, the whole thing. I was hoping for a future where men and women were treated equally on their merits, not just what you got going on between your legs. And one of the things that I find interesting about some of the communities I'm in, I look around some of the evangelical communities and I see women that either put each other down over their appearance or leaving evangelical Christianity. I struggle with the idea of being connected with my body. I'm not always good about that. I am not always the best about noticing things. Shoot, it took me 3 days to notice I was getting a cold. Please, single guys do a lot worse than single women. I was reading that, Celine. I was reading about single men have far fewer home ownership, many different metrics, health, all sorts of different things. And I really believe that just from what little I've seen. And yeah, it's bad enough that not just the patriarchy and the evangelical, non-denominational taco type churches that are heaping this crap on each other. Heaping this crap on each other completely devoid of religion. How many times of you're a woman, you should be doing X, Y, and Z? It happens all the time. Hell, I tried to take part in it this morning when everybody was beaten up without a box of Kleenex because of her eyebrow infection. I started to call it her liebrow after she had been calling Robin from Sister Wives eyebrows, crybrows. I thought, well, that's a liebrow if I've ever seen one. No, 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 that's wrong. None of us should be saying that stuff. We should be going after people's behavior, things like that, not appearances ever. And this is the kind of toxic thing that has come out of patriarchy that seeps into just regular American culture that ends up everywhere, that ends up harming everybody. These are the kind of things that I am against and I stand against because we should be supporting each other as best we can and not supporting bad behavior. We should be calling out bad behavior without linking it to the person and saying, oh, this person's an awful person. You can think all day long that somebody is an awful person, but when you start calling that out and saying, you are an awful person, you're part of the problem with what's going on in this world where we're all so divided that it's led us to this brink of destruction we seem to be on right now. I know I'm straying from a lot of different places that I wanted. We wanted to go to Spain really badly. Always wanted to go there. I've never been. One of the places that I've always wanted to go was San Moritz. I see that all the time on CNN here, and it just looks like someplace I've always wanted to go that I never could. Um, well, I never would, I should say. Not never could, because I could get on a plane and go there tomorrow, but I'm not going to. So back to the whole thing with men and their ownership of women's bodies. We see this all the time in evangelical town. We just do. We see the guys think this way, they act this way, they tell you what you can and cannot wear. Other women are cultural enforcers and say, wear those yoga pants and you are a sleazy, slimy CULT. And that's a sliding scale of modesty too. There's sliding scales of it, which is utterly ridiculous. Wear what you want, wear what you feel comfortable in. Don't worry about what anybody else says. And if they're offended looking at you, they can just look away as far as I'm concerned. Celine. Paris never interested me, but the French Riviera looks absolutely beautiful in the countryside. Absolutely. It does. It looks heavenly. I've always wanted to go to the French Riviera. Hans. But never really made it there yet. Um, even though I have been to France many, 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 many long years ago, 1981. In fact, I always say, and this is a weird little side ramble, but every time I have a nightmare about looking for a bathroom to go pee, it's always 1981. It's always Paris. I'm always trotting around Paris in 1981 looking for a place to go pee. Um, it's so expensive. I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is quite expensive. But here is not much cheaper, even though I like to say, come on, gringos, come visit Costa Rica. It's not cheap. It's not cheap at all. And so all these men think they own women's bodies. And this leads them to not just treat your body like they get to tell you what to wear. It leads them sometimes to treat your bodies in some very weird ways. Sunday wearing this very loose dress with a shade shirt and somebody that I don't much like, who's been kind of a pain in the butt, come up to me at church, and they just were not very, let's just say, I would call them creep outside of the church. They did some creepy things that involved holding my hand, sitting next to me, and putting their arm around me and sliding their hand down to cup a feel, and it was just weird. And I was real mad at first, but I started thinking about it. Yeah, he thinks he owns the women. It's kind of like in Evangelical town, one thing I've learned is that the men treat all women like, remember in the Disney movie The Lion King, how Simba's father tells him that everything the light touches they own. It's like every woman that meets my gaze, I own, seems to be the way that a lot of them treat it. And it kind of blows my mind sometimes when they do that. Kind of curvy, and these are white guys I'm talking to. And one of them said, my body is perfect the way I am, and that it meant so much to me. That's always good when you find somebody that thinks your body is the perfect one for them. I'm kind of curvy too. I'm not kind of curvy. I am curvy. And the guy that did this had acted creepy towards another friend of mine recently. So I'm not entirely surprised. I am surprised he did it. And um I may have a conversation about the pastor with the pastor about this, not about the pastor. That pastor is useless as a box of rocks, I think. But I'm still gonna have the conversation with him. Um, Whenever I'm away from this stuff a long time, and then the next thing I know, something like that happens, I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I remember. I remember." Something like that happens, I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I remember. I remember they used to do this." Even as so Chad, I am on and off again. He has the body of an Adonis. I'm shocked to hear him say, like my body. The men who are very yeah, the ones that are very scrutinous of women's body types are not Brad Pitt or George Clooney. Used to work with a guy at a computer place, and I was still part of the church at the time, my old fundamentalist church, evangelical church. So this guy, he probably weighed every bit of 300 pounds. He was not a skinny guy. He was plump and fluffy himself. He lived on fried cheese and French fries and milkshakes. I kid you not. And he thought nothing of complaining about women's bodies all the time. He wanted somebody who was a supermodel while he looked more like a fluffy little cloud. And I would try to talk to him and say, "Hey, you might need to work on yourself if you were thinking about attracting that type of woman." "No way, man. I am perfect. I'm a man." I'm like, "Hmm?" The sexy guys are usually more open. Yep, they usually are, has been my experience. Husband sleeping in the corner. He's still recovering from his surgery. So I keep my fingers crossed that the whole bodily autonomy thing, that this is just a blip, that it just passes quickly, because it's just gotten really dumb the way that men in the churches act about women. And this is why in evangelical churches there's so many cases of women being abused. Yes, abused, since I have to use YouTube euphemisms. It's really high when you start looking at the abuse rates that are going on, because these guys don't think women have bodily autonomy at all. They think that if you're there, you're free game, that they own everything, everyone the light touches. This goes on. So. That's basically my rant today. To say I loved at the end of Barbie when Ken steps down from patriarchy and they're having their conversation. He says this quote, "To be honest, when I found out that patriarchy wasn't just about horses, I lost interest." Yeah, he was all about the horses. And I guess it was overwhelming to a simple mind to be exposed to all the patriarchy provocators that we see out there. And there are a ton of. Okay, you guys, I am just gonna go lay down because this has been a heck of a day. I had to run out and get cat food earlier. I have a bad cold. Forgot to eat breakfast. You know what happens when you forget to eat breakfast? You come home carrying this kind of crap. But you have no business eating carmeladas, popcorn. Yeah, nobody needs this stuff. I probably will be having a little bit of it later. So that's my little rant today. I probably will revisit this subject when I have more brain power again and better notes. But for now, I just had to rant about this a little bit because of having somebody violating my physical boundaries. And that was really hard for me because I really wanted to get up and smack him in the head. And I know that would have gone over about like a lead balloon. So I did not do it. Love you guys. Take care of yourselves. Will try to be back Friday with a book review. I'm 2 books behind. I have got, Shannon Harris's The Woman They Wanted, which was a blockbuster for me. I read through that. I was nodding my head so many times going, "Yep, that's exactly how it was." And she touches upon this a little bit in the book about having to be perfect all the time, having to look a certain way, having to dress a certain way, having to be a certain way, and how she ended up pretty much just crushed on the tines of this thing. The other one I read that I need to do a review of is Trey Ferguson's Theologizing Bigger. So those 2 are coming up. I love you guys, and I'll catch up with you later.